The midday sun slanted through the towering columns of the Astoria Grand Hotel, turning every polished marble surface into a mirror for the petals drifting down the aisle. Soft classical strings tumbled from hidden speakers, weaving through the chatter of well-heeled guests. Crystal glasses chimed, perfume clouds rippled. A sea of designer gowns and sharply tailored suits created a living tapestry of opulence. At the center of it all stood Sebastian Blackwood in a crisp ivory tuxedo, his jaw set, eyes fixed on the distant doors. He believed every element of this day had been arranged for perfection, except, perhaps, the guest he had summoned with the cruelest intention. Isabella Montclair, his radiant fiancée, lingered at the base of the grand staircase like a queen awaiting her crowning moment. Her ruched silk gown shimmered like water under the lights, and every inch of her posture declared confidence. Beside her, bridesmaids in pale pink paused mid-laugh, their hands frozen on delicate bouquets. The room buzzed with anticipation for the bridal procession. But tonight's true spectacle had yet to arrive. In the VIP lounge of the hotel's east wing, swirling champagne in crystal flutes, Sebastian had leaned in close to the maitre d' and whispered, "Make sure she's in the front row. I want everyone to see the woman I once loved looking utterly out of place." His tone carried a sweetness that froze the servant's blood. He handed over the invitation, an ornate gold-leafed card bearing her name, and watched with cold satisfaction as the staff members delivered it to Evelyn Moore. Evelyn, his ex-wife, had stared at that gilded envelope as though it were a trap, and he had intended it as one. She had worn the scars of their broken marriage like a second skin. The depleted bank account, the lean months once she moved back into her mother's modest townhouse, the blur of grief she had pushed through to keep herself afloat. Sebastian had believed she'd arrive in threadbare flats, head bowed, haunted by the regret he'd stoked. Then he would lead a tasteful standing ovation to honor his new bride and leave Evelyn to shuffle away in shame. But the hush that swept the ballroom moments later was not one of embarrassment. It was reverence. Through the double doors glided a gleaming black Rolls-Royce Phantom, its coach doors swinging open like the curtains of a private theater. Gasps echoed off the crystal chandeliers, hands fluttered to throats, not a servant in sight, only Evelyn Moore, tall, proud, draped in a silk coat the color of storm clouds. Her hair was pulled back in a simple chignon, revealing high cheekbones and eyes that burned with quiet certainty. And behind her, in unnervingly perfect formation, stood 3 children clutching her skirts. Ava, with hair tied in a satin bow and lips trembling with awe, and the twins, Luke and Leo, in charcoal grey suits that matched their mother's coat, faces solemn until they caught sight of Sebastian. At that moment, their eyes widened, as though recognition were a spark igniting across the distance. The violinist faltered. Even the marble floor seemed to still beneath Evelyn's heels. Eyes darted between her and Isabella, who looked more like a startled starlet than a bride expecting to be upstaged. Sebastian's hand tightened on the velvet-covered program. The hush washed through the crowd like a tide, and all because of one woman and her 3 children arriving not in a humble taxi but a Rolls-Royce that trailed authority in its wake. Whispers ricocheted through the room. A senator in a midnight blue suit whispered to his partner, could it possibly be? A fashion editor untucked her notebook, pencil poised. Why is she here? They mouthed to each other. The hotel staff exchanged nervous glances. They had never seen such a dramatic entrance. Even photographers scrambled to reposition, shouting behind lenses, desperate for the perfect shot. From his vantage by the altar, Sebastian forced his shoulders to relax. His trademark charm flickered back into place. "Proceed," he murmured to the head usher. The organist launched into a hesitant chord, the hush fracturing into a brittle silence that signaled the start of the ceremony. Only they were walking down the aisle, not Isabella. Evelyn glided forward, each measured step a proclamation. "I am no longer your victim, and the world would bear witness." Isabella's composure cracked on the edge of a breath. She gripped her bouquet so tightly that the lilies bent. Hot embarrassment welled in her cheeks as she met Evelyn's gaze. For a moment, time fractured. 2 women standing on the same threshold, one dressed in Victorian lace, trembling with fear and vindication, the other in Dior couture, radiating poised outrage. The guests, caught in the crossfire, leaned in, No wedding vow had ever carried so much suspense. Beneath his perfect tuxedo, Sebastian's pulse hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He had expected to humiliate Evelyn, to showcase her poverty, to confirm to high society circles that she had never fit among them. Instead, he saw elegance that money couldn't fake, dignity that no social climb could purchase. The triplets, the finest testament to his legacy, stood behind her, flanking her shoulders with silent loyalty. In those long seconds, the entire ceremony pivoted. The aisle meant to carry Isabella toward a new beginning had become a collision course between past sins and future reckonings. Every flashbulb stuttered, every breath caught. Silence didn't mean judgment. It meant anticipation. The real story was about to unfold. Sebastian forced his shoulders back, pulling in a controlled breath as Evelyn halted at the very center of the aisle. All eyes tracked the small knot of 3 children and the woman who walked them here. The hush that once held the room now hummed with question. What happens next? Isabella's jaw clenched, her perfectly arched eyebrows quivered. Sebastian fixed her with a look meant to say, "Stay calm," but even he felt the tremor in his voice. He cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called, but his words echoed oddly against the stone columns. "We are about to begin the ceremony. My fiancée, Isabella." Evelyn's coat sleeve brushed his arm. No anger, only calm authority. The simple touch derailed his speech. His fiancée's bouquet slipped from her nervous fingers. Flowers tumbled to the red carpet. Isabella gasped as Evelyn took a single step closer, her high heel tapping crisply. Evelyn lifted a hand, palm outward, and the organist's hesitant chords stuttered to silence. No one dared interrupt. She looked to the guests, billionaire heirs, industry titans, socialites in couture, then spoke so quietly the room leaned in. "I did not come here to beg your sympathy," she said. Her voice was steady, confident, yet there was an undercurrent of pain beneath the silk. "I came to claim what I have earned by blood, sweat, and heartbreak, and to introduce you to 3 little people who belong to this man." At her words, the children shuffled forward, tiny but resolute. Ava's bow was immaculate. She stared wide-eyed at the crowd, and her black patent leather shoes tapped a steady rhythm. Luke and Leo walked beside her, mirror images in matching suits, their hair slicked to one side. They held hands, as though to comfort each other for what was coming. Guests murmured, "Are those his children? How could he hide them?" The senator in blue blinked twice, unable to process it. Sebastian's throat churned. His vision blurred for a moment as memories flooded back. The day she left him, her face streaked with tears as she gathered their son's tiny hand in hers and fled. He had watched through the front wind. Dow as the black sedan pulled away, carrying the weight of what he thought was final shame. He'd never imagined she'd build a life so strong that she'd return not in a humble taxi, but in a phantom that cut through Manhattan traffic like a royal carriage. Now he stood at the altar, ivory lapels gleaming under crystal lights, and saw 3 living proofs of a past he had chosen to bury. The hush rippled into confusion. Isabella's pale lips parted. She opened and closed her mouth without sound. The bridesmaids stuttered, clutching each other's arms. Even the photographers lowered their cameras, disbelief etched across every lens. Evelyn cleared her throat. "Good afternoon." She glanced at Sebastian with neither resentment nor regret, only a steadiness that made his heart fracture. "Sebastian Blackwood, I have supported my 3 children without your name or your fortune. I provided them a home, an education, a life beyond the mansion walls you locked me out of." She motioned to Luke. "This is Luke, whom you see before you. He's 5, smart and braver than I ever gave you credit for." Luke's gaze held Sebastian's, and behind his eyes flickered a recognition untainted by forced decorum. The child's voice rang clear. "Daddy, I remember you." The room froze. Sebastian's hand twitched. He blinked at Luke as though the child's words were a dream. Guests gasped. A hush as dense as velvet fell. If that moment had happened on any other stage, it would have become legend. Instead, it was a wedding. Evelyn swallowed and turned to Leo. "And this is his twin brother, Leo, who never misses a beat when I sing him bedtime songs. He thinks everything is made of possibility, except a father who won't stand by him." Leo's small chin jutted out with fierce determination. "I want to know why you left us." Leo's question was a spark in a powder room. Isabella's eyes narrowed. She pressed her red-lacquered fingertips to her lips. Sebastian's pulse thundered. He felt every year of regret slam into him. Finally, Evelyn faced Ava. The little girl's features mirrored his own, the arch of her eyebrow, the curve of her cheek, the small dimple when she pressed her lips together in uncertain hope. "And this is Ava," Evelyn said, voice softening. "She has a question too." Ava hesitated, blinked, then lifted a small hand to Sebastian. "Daddy, are you proud of us?" The question squashed the last of the ceremony's decorum. The organist's stand creaked as he slid down. Isabella's bridesmaids stifled sobs. Cameras clicked in panic. Sebastian opened his mouth, but no words came. He thought of the black envelope he'd sent her, the taunt that would humiliate her in front of New York's finest. She could not have predicted that he would gift her a Rolls-Royce instead of a taxi, or that she would bring 3 children who wore his features like a silent testimony. The memory of their divorce carved another line across his face. How he bragged to board members that she was a gold digger. How he whispered to friends that she was too weak for luxury. How he celebrated the day she moved out. He had assumed she'd crawl back, begging for crumbs, but she had done the unthinkable. She had built a life on her own terms. Sebastian steadied his trembling hand on the altar rail. "Isabella," he said at last, voice rough, "please step back." His fiancée shook her head, mouth a thin line. She'd rehearsed her response for weeks, scathing congratulations, a cold betrayal. But she looked at Evelyn and the children, and her eyes softened in confusion instead of triumph. Before Isabella could push forward, Evelyn spoke again. "Isabella, you look lovely. This dress is exquisite. But the question tonight isn't about beauty or lace." Her gaze flicked to the photographer. "When they write about this day, they'll talk about the bride, the cake, the champagne, but they will remember the Wabon Omen who came back stronger than ever." A swell of emotion rolled through the crowd. Astonished applause began at the back of the ballroom, spreading like a wave to the front. Some guests rose to their feet. Sebastian saw once proud faces brightening with admiration for Evelyn. The breaking news alert flashed on several journalists' phones. "Ex-wife arrives in style. Children in tow. Scoop!" He swallowed hard. The air tasted metallic. He thought he could weigh every decision from the past decade, and in one instant, he knew he had underestimated her. Evelyn tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and turned her gaze to the aisle doors. "This ceremony will proceed," she said, "but not as you planned. Tonight's vows will be different." She stepped back, placing her children before her in a protective arc. The room stilled again, jaws slack. Sebastian felt the walls of his perfect day crumble. Isabella blinked until her lashes glistened with tears. The bridesmaids huddled together, unable to decide whether to cry or cheer. Photographers snapped feverishly. The violinist raised her bow as though she'd been given the cue to strike the first note of a new movement. Evelyn took a breath. "Sebastian Blackwood," she said, voice resolute. "You invited me here to disgrace me. I accept this invitation, but tonight you will bear witness to more humility than I ever showed you." She stepped aside, and the children moved forward, looping their small fingers through Sebastian's. Luke whispered so only he could hear, "We forgive you, Daddy." Leo brushed his hand against Sebastian's as though testing a fragile truth. Ava leaned in and placed a tiny kiss on his knuckles. The gesture shattered every bit of Sebastian's armor. He closed his eyes, inhaled the scent of rose petals and possibility, and when he opened them again, they glistened with unshed tears. Isabella exhaled, dropping her bouquet. Embroidered petals scattered across the carpet. The guests gasped as the bride's place at the altar remained empty. Evelyn stepped forward and took Sebastian's arm. "If this is your stage," she murmured, "allow me to show you what grace looks like." And in that moment, the Astoria Grand Hotel held its breath for a second chance to rewrite a story that had nearly ended in ruin. Evelyn led Sebastian forward, one hand still entwined in his. The crystal chandeliers overhead shimmered in approval as a hush fell once more over the Astoria Grand Ballroom. The violinist drew her bow back, then hesitated, as though waiting for permission. Sebastian's heart thundered beneath his tuxedo jacket. Every gaze in the room seemed to rest on his chin. on the small knot of children holding his other hand, on the woman who stood before him, his wife of the past and the mother of his 3 children. Silence hung thick until Evelyn raised her free hand. "I asked the organist for one thing," she said softly, and the hush cracked into silence. "Let the first notes usher in a new beginning." She nodded, and the organist struck a single, gentle chord that echoed in the columns. The hush deepened, but this time it carried hope more than judgment. The pianist joined in, weaving a simple melody beneath Evelyn's words. "Sebastian Blackwood," she continued, her voice a calm current under the music. "Tonight you stand before me, before our children, before those who witnessed my humiliation and your betrayal. But tonight I choose forgiveness, I choose truth, and I choose a family renewed." She gestured toward Luke, Leo, and Ava, whose small hands clutched Sebastian's fingers with quiet bravery. The twins exchanged a glance before stepping forward together. Luke's voice trembled only slightly when he said, "Daddy, promise you won't leave us again." Leo added with more steadiness, "Promise that we'll be safe, always." Ava's small voice rose above the organ chords, "Promise you love us." A wave of emotion rolled through Sebastian. He knelt to bring Hikuai himself closer to their level, his knees pressing softly into the red carpet. "I promise," he said, voice catching. "I promise I'll never leave you. I promise to protect you, to cherish you, to build a life worthy of all that you deserve." He looked at Evelyn. "And you," he added, voice steadier now. "Thank you for bringing our children back into my life. Thank you for reminding me what truly matters." Evelyn's gaze softened. She offered him a small vintage ring with 3 tiny diamonds set in a single band, one for each child. The ring glinted like hope in her palm. "This ring is not for me alone," she said, sliding it onto his finger. "It represents the love we share for our children, for our family, and for the truth that binds us." At that moment, Isabella rose from her chair. Her pale pink gown caught the chandelier light as she advanced toward the altar, eyes bright with tears. The bridesmaids gasped. She paused just behind Evelyn and lifted her bouquet from the carpet. Everyone waited for a glare of revenge, but instead she bowed her head in surrender. "I see now," Isabella whispered, voice thick, "that your story is yours to tell. I am no longer your bride, Sebastian, nor your rival. I wish you the happiness you've rediscovered." Sebastian blinked in shock as Isabella turned and walked away down the aisle. Each of her steps was a release, a kiss blown to the past, and a salute to what remained. The guests unclutched their programs, leaning forward as if to catch every beat of this unscripted moment. The organ swelled with a warmer chord, and the pianist's melody softened into a lullaby. Evelyn took Sebastian's hand and clasped it gently. She looked into his eyes and said, "You are our children's father. You are their hero. If you forgive Isaiah and me, let us walk forward together." Sebastian stood, sliding down the aisle to join the twins and Ava at the threshold. With their small hands in his, he stepped forward again. The crowd parted, creating a human corridor bathed in crystal light. Journalists raised microphones. Photographers snapped hundreds of shots of the family's new beginning. Champagne corks popped somewhere at the back of the room. Soft murmurs of approval rippled through the audience. The matron of honor approached with 2 small cushions bearing matching rings for Evelyn and Sebastian. Luke held one cushion, Leo held the other, and Ava helped them keep warm. Evelyn lifted her gaze. "Sebastian Blackwood, will you continue to love me, honor me, and stand by our family through whatever storms may come?" Sebastian sank to one knee, a gesture both traditional and deeply personal. "Evelyn Montclair," he said, "I will honor our children. I will honor you. I will love our family with all I have and all I will become. I pledge my heart, my respect, and my loyalty." With that, he slipped the second skin-soft ring onto Evelyn's finger. She smiled through tears, and the twins squealed. "We did it!" Ava clapped her small hands, a tiny burst of pure delight. Overhead, the chandeliers shimmered as the organist held the final chord. The violinist joined in a gentle duet, the first notes of a new song for a newly committed family. The ballroom erupted in applause, not for a princess in silk, but for a mother and father who chose forgiveness over revenge, and a family that chose to stand together. Sebastian rose, lifting the 3 children into his arms one by one, first Ava, then Luke and Leo. They squealed as their father carried them forward to a waiting group of loved ones. Evelyn's mother in soft cashmere, Mrs. Blackwood's eyes red but shining with pride, and close friends who had watched them fall apart and now stand stronger than ever. Isabella lingered at the threshold, watching their joy with a bittersweet smile. She slipped out a back door to let them have their victory in peace. The reception area beyond the ballroom awaited with tables of white roses, Eldon candles and welcome home banners in black and gold calligraphy. The waitstaff lined up, ready to serve champagne and caviar to guests who now were eager to toast not a wedding, but a resurrection, a proof that love and truth triumph over spite. As the family moved through the splintered arch of onlookers, the ring of cameras faded into warm laughter. Evelyn's hand found Sebastian's, and his dove-blue eyes flicked to hers. On her face was the quiet joy of someone who survived betrayal, heartbreak, and solitude, only to find a beginning more radiant than any fairy tale. The music shifted to a waltz, and Sebastian extended a hand to Evelyn. She placed her palm in his, and they floated into the first dance, children at their feet, friends and relatives encircling them in celebration. Each step was a promise renewed, a vow kept, a future reclaimed. And as they swayed beneath the glittering lights, Sebastian knew that the story he thought he controlled had rewritten itself in her grace. The Rolls-Royce outside waited for its next call, but tonight the only journey that mattered was the one they were taking together, hand in hand, as a family at last whole. The reception hall beyond the ballroom doors gleamed like a secret garden come to life. Crystal chandeliers swung above tables draped in ivory linen, each centerpiece a cascade of white roses and pale pink peonies. The pianist had shifted into an upbeat jazz waltz, and laughter threaded through the air like golden ribbon. Servers in black tie waistcoats wove between guests, offering flutes of champagne and trays of caviar-topped canapés. Aromas of freshly baked brioche and herb-crusted lamb mingled with the soft waft of rosewater, setting a festive tone that enveloped every attendee. Even the floral arrangements, previously stoic in the ballroom, seemed to exhale relief, petals loosening as though to join the celebration. A hush of reverent chatter rose when Sebastian and Evelyn stepped thus, rough the threshold, hand in hand with their 3 children bouncing at their sides. Ava clutched Sebastian's index finger and gazed up at the chandelier lights while Leo and Luke exchanged conspiratorial grins. Close friends and family formed a protective semicircle, leaving the center clear for the newly reunited family to pass. Many guests dabbed at their eyes, some with smiles, others with astonished laughter. Reporters who had anticipated scandal instead found themselves witnessing an impromptu triumph of forgiveness and hope. Conversations flickered. "Did you hear his vow?" one woman murmured. "He's never looked happier." Across the room, someone else whispered, "I've attended thousands of weddings, but never one like this." Marcus stepped forward with a half-smile and raised his flute. The hush fell again, this time charged with anticipation rather than shock. "To family," he began, voice warm and steady. "Not the family you imagine, with grand estates and titles, but the kind built on shared laughter, tears, and sometimes the hardest lessons. Today, we witness the power of truth and grace, and how both can remake even the most broken bonds. To Sebastian, Evelyn, Luke, Leo, and Ava, thank you for showing us that a true family is not defined by circumstance, but by love." He lifted his glass, and the clink of crystal set off waves of toasts and cheers. Even Isabella, standing off to the side, lifted her flute and offered a genuine smile. Next came Mrs. Hope Vaughan, cane in hand, her silhouette regal in a dove-grey evening gown. She cleared her throat and raised her glass high. "When your son Sebastian was born, I prayed he would grow into a man of integrity, and though he stumbled, he found his way back, to the woman who loved him first, and to the children who remained his even when he could not see them. Evelyn Montclair, you have my everlasting gratitude for fighting quietly, fiercely, and with unwavering dignity. You have taught us all that true strength often wears a gentle face." Her words resonated through the hall, eliciting a fresh round of applause. Even the air itself seemed to tremble with approval. As the speeches concluded, servers unveiled the cake, a 3-tiered masterpiece of white chocolate mousse and raspberry coulis, each tier adorned with hand-painted florals that matched the reception bouquets. A hush fell again as Sebastian and Evelyn exchanged cake knives. He guided her hand in a practiced pose, and they sliced the top layer together. White filling spilled onto the plate, and the audience cheered as Luke and Leo each tapped the smallest piece with eager forks. Ava blew a droplet of mousse from her pink-coated finger, giggling uncontrollably. Cameras flashed, securing the moment for posterity. It was a perfect, unguarded family tableau. Outside the grand arched windows, a lone figure watched from the edge of the terrace. Cassandra Montlaire, heels perched on marble, pressed her hand to the cool glass. The distant strains of music and festive laughter drifted out to her like a taunt. Her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She straightened her designer cloak and turned away, disappearing into the night. Somewhere in her wake, a blackberry flashed, capturing her retreating silhouette, a reminder that even endings can harbor new beginnings. Back inside, the dance floor opened beneath a shower of twinkling lights. Sebastian lifted Ava into his arms and spun her gently, her laughter ringing brighter than any champagne pop. Leo seized Sebastian's hand next, and they danced a spirited jig that drew cheers from the gathering. Luke stepped in with a determined expression, insisting on his own turn. In that swirl of movement, Sebastian realized how fragile life could be, and how luminous when embraced fully. After the first family dance, Evelyn was swept into the arms of dear friends. A circle formed around her and the bar. Children, smiles blooming as they swayed to the music. Champagne sparkled in the background like captured stars. Conversations rose in glad hum. Colleagues promised future business deals. Relatives spoke of summer gatherings at the lake house, and a pair of university classmates whispered plans for a joint philanthropic venture. None mentioned the scandal that had threatened to overshadow the day, only the miracle of its recovery. As twilight deepened beyond the terrace windows, Sebastian guided Evelyn to a small raised platform where a quartet had assembled. The quartet began a soft, lyrical tune, and Evelyn tugged at Sebastian's sleeve. He nodded, and she lifted her hand. "Before the night carries us away, there is one more promise to make," she said, voice carrying over the music. "To every person here, thank you for believing in love's second chances. To my children, may you wake every morning knowing you are loved beyond measure. And to you, Sebastian, thank you for waking up today ready to choose us all again." The final note drifted into silence, and for a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, like an avalanche of emotion, the room erupted in an ovation. Glasses rose once more, shoes tapped in celebration, and 3 little faces shone with pride behind their parents' arms. Outside, the Black Phantom idled under the lantern-lit arch, its polished surface reflecting the golden glow. In that moment, the Astoria Grand Hotel witnessed not just a wedding reception, but the dawn of a family reborn. The Rolls-Royce that had announced Evelyn's return now waited to carry them forward, toward a future neither money nor malice could ever again keep them from owning together. The town car carried them through the quiet streets, headlights gliding over damp pavement like liquid silver. Sebastian craned his neck to glance back at the Phantom's rear window, where Ava pressed her small fuffer. Oarhead, eyes shining with wonder. Leo and Luke fought the exhaustion in their limbs, eyelids drooping even as they clung to his hands. Evelyn sat beside him, brushing a strand of hair from Luke's brow, her voice soft with triumph and relief. "They did so well," she whispered. "I'm so proud of them." Sebastian nodded, his thumb tracing the pattern on Luke's coat sleeve. "They were amazing," he replied. "None of it would have been possible without you." The weight of gratitude in his tone made Evelyn's cheeks flush. Outside, the street lamps retreated behind them as they left Manhattan bustle for the quiet of the suburbs. Oak-lined avenues gave way to the familiar gates of the estate he had once shared with Evelyn and their children. It felt like a homecoming neither of them expected to celebrate in unity. On the front lawn, lanterns glowed along the flagstone path, casting gentle pools of light across the freshly mown grass. Mrs. Blackwood stood at the threshold, hat in hand, tears brimming in her eyes. She swept forward to embrace her son and his family, clutching Ava's shoulder, then stroking Evelyn's arm. "Welcome home," she murmured, voice thick. "We've all missed you so much." The children tumbled from Sebastian's arms, squealing as they raced toward their grandmother, whose laughter echoed like music. Marcus and Mr. Alcott waited on the steps, flanking the doorway with nods of both respect and relief. Inside, the grand foyer was transformed into a cozy retreat. Candles flickered on antique tables, family portraits glowed in soft lamplight, and the scent of rosemary bread warmed the air. A tray of pajamas in various sizes stood ready on a sideboard. Evelyn knelt to hand out a pair to Ava, who hugged her mother, exhausted but unwilling to let go. "Good night, my brave girl," Evelyn said, kissing her forehead. Ava yawned, nodding before slipping upstairs with Mrs. Blackwood. Leo and Luke followed, each gripping a parent's hand, sleepy chins wobbling. Once the children were safely tucking themselves into the bedrooms they once shared, Sebastian and Evelyn found themselves alone in the hushed living room. The crackle of the fireplace filled the silence, embers glowing like distant stars. He closed the door softly, then turned to her, hesitation in his gaze. "I never thought we'd stand together like this," he said, voice low, "especially after everything I said and did." Evelyn perched on a velvet chaise, pulling her knees close. She studied the flames for a moment before facing him. "You didn't know you were hurting us," she said gently, "and I couldn't risk their safety by trusting you again until I knew you could see them as your own." Her calm assertion sent a tremor through him. He sat opposite her, leaning forward, elbows resting on his knees. "And now?" he asked. "Do you trust me?" She inhaled, searching his eyes. "I trust that you're here," she said, "that you chose them over your pride tonight. But trust grows, Sebastian. It needs more than a ceremony. It needs time, consistency, and honesty." He let her words sink in, the flickering firelight dancing across the cracks in his resolve. "I'm ready," he said, "for anything it takes." Evelyn's lips curved in a small smile. She rose and closed the distance between them, placing her hand on his cheek. "Then let's begin anew," she whispered. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into a careful embrace, as though afraid she might disappear. In that moment, the house exhaled, and long-forgotten warmth returned to its walls. Upstairs, the nursery door stood slightly ajar. Leo and Luke lay side by side on a shared bed, one twin's arm draped protectively over the other. In the hallway, Ava sat cross-legged before the mirror, brushing her hair into neat braids. Mrs. Blackwood paused to watch her granddaughter, a soft smile on her face. "They've grown so much," she murmured, thinking back to the tiny infant she had first held, and now they have a father who loves them. A few doors down, Marcus labored over one final detail. Flash drives and printed pages lay on a writing desk. Medical records, DNA results, school enrollment forms, trust funds established in the children's names, proof of a future insulated from scandal or manipulation. He packed them into a leather portfolio labeled with an embossed monogram, then tucked it under his arm. It was time to hand these documents to Sebastian and Evelyn to lay the foundation for the children's protection. Later that night, in the master suite, a single lamp glowed on the bedside table. Sebastian lay back against plush pillows, head heavy with memories. Evelyn sat beside him, brushing invisible flecks of dust from his lapel. "Thank you for today," she said quietly, "for stepping into the unknown." He reached for her hand, threading their fingers. "Thank you for showing me what mattered," he replied. "For forgiving me." She leaned forward, resting her head on his shoulder. "Forgiveness is just the start," she said. "It's a promise to keep moving toward each other, even when it's hard." He nodded, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I promise," he whispered, "every day." Down the hall, the nursery monitor crackled softly, the twins breathing even in their sleep. In another room, Ava stirred, whispered, "Daddy?" in a half-dream, then sighed and shifted against Mrs. Blackwood's comforting arm. Everywhere within these walls, a family once fractured was knitting itself back together with threads of trust, courage, and love. Sebastian closed his eyes, listening to the steady rhythms of the home around him. The muted hum of the HVAC, the faint rustle of tapestry curtains, the comforting patter of Marcus's footsteps retreating with the portfolio of their future. He knew the road ahead would hold new challenges, business pressures, societal scrutiny, The inevitable awkwardness of re-establishing roles. But for the first time in years, he felt rooted, ready to face whatever came with Evelyn by his side, and Tashnata, children, in his heart. Morning would bring a new chapter. Breakfast cooked together, laughter over spilled orange juice, a photo session in the garden to commemorate their renewed vows. There would be phone calls to business partners, school arrangements for the twins and Ava, perhaps an editorial in one of the society pages celebrating the most remarkable family reunion of the year. All of it would matter less than the simple truth that bound them. They were a family reborn. He traced Evelyn's hand with gentle fingers, marveling at the way their lives had converged again when he least expected it. The Rolls-Royce waited outside to escort them to new adventures, charity galas, summer vacations, quiet Sunday brunches in bed. But tonight he would savor the silence of home, the warmth of her cheek against his, and the promise that they belonged to each other once more. As he drifted towards sleep, his last waking thought was one of gratitude. For the wife he nearly lost, the children he almost forsook, and the grace that had led them back together. The estate exhaled around him, secure in the knowledge that its walls now held a family who had weathered betrayal and emerged stronger. And in that quiet, he finally understood. Love was not merely a ceremony. It was a choice made every day. The early morning light filtered through lace curtains, casting a soft glow across the master suite. Sebastian lay half awake, one arm draped across the plush duvet, listening to the quiet rhythms of the estate coming to life. Birds calling in the garden, the distant rumble of a courier truck on the gravel drive, Ava's muffled yawns as she stirred in the adjoining bedroom. He slipped from the bed and padded barefoot to the window, where the dew-drenched lawn and topiary hedges gleamed like emeralds in the dawn. Somewhere beyond the rose arbors, Mrs. Blackwood was already tending the greenhouse, coaxing orchids into bloom for the day's events. He paused at the door, steeling himself for the responsibilities ahead. Last night's reunion had been both catharsis and promise, but daylight demanded action. Phone calls to trustees, scheduling press interviews, and, most important, keeping the fragile trust within his family protected. He stepped into the corridor, where the soft light trailed along oriental rugs, and knocked gently on the nursery door. Leo's sleepy face peered out first, hair mussed, one hand rubbing his eyes. Luke followed, shoulders hunched like exhausted soldiers. "Morning, champ," Sebastian murmured, scooping both boys into an embrace. Their suits lay folded on a chair, waiting to be pressed. "Time for breakfast, and we've got a photo shoot later. Remember?" Luke's eyes brightened at the mention of cameras. "Will the photographs be in the magazine, Daddy?" he asked. Sebastian smiled. "Yes, the one you love. The one with all the glossy pages and stories about families who overcome." Leo swung his legs and added, "Can we wear our green vests? I like them best." Sebastian nodded and carried them toward Ava's door. Inside, Ava sat in her pajama set, brushing her long hair in front of a vintage vanity mirror. Her bow was slightly askew, but when she spotted her father's face in the glass, she laughed. "Good morning, Daddy," she said, slipping her arms around his neck. Sebastian kissed her forehead and tousled her hair gently. "Morning, my star." He helped her into a pale yellow sundress, the one she insisted matched the morning sunshine, and fastened the buttons with exaggerated care, making her giggle. By the time they reached the breakfast nook, the table was laid with fresh fruit, scrambled eggs, and warm croissants. Evelyn emerged from the kitchen, flower on her sleeves, her hair tied back in a loose braid. She greeted them with a tired but genuine smile. "I thought you all might like blueberry pancakes," she said, sliding a stack onto the table. The children cheered. Ed and Sebastian placed each of them in their tall chairs. As they ate, conversation fell into the easy rhythms of family life. Ava recounted her dreams. "I flew on a sparkly unicorn," while Leo and Luke debated the merits of chocolate syrup on pancakes. Evelyn passed plates around, occasionally brushing a crumb from Sebastian's lapel with a teasing smile. "You look good in syrup," she teased. He rolled his eyes but ducked into a laugh. Sitting there, surrounded by laughter, Sebastian felt the weight of regret recede, replaced by resolve, to protect these moments, to prove worthy of this second chance. Over coffee, Sebastian glanced at his watch. "We need to get ready soon," he said. "The magazine crew arrives at 10. They want to see the Rose Garden, interview you about Montgomery Deluxe, and capture some family portraits." Evelyn nodded, understanding how this feature could cement her reputation as both an entrepreneur and a devoted mother. and showcase Sebastian's role in their children's lives. After breakfast, they moved upstairs to change. Mrs. Blackwood met them on the landing, tray in hand with pressed uniforms for the twins, a fresh hair ribbon for Ava, and 2 gently heated bathrobes for her son and daughter-in-law. She pressed Sebastian's hand in hers and whispered, "You look like you've found yourselves." He smiled, emotion flickering in his eyes. "We're still working on it," he replied. In the powder room, Evelyn adjusted her blazer, navy with delicate pinstripes, its tailored lines echoing both corporate authority and maternal warmth. She glanced at her reflection and inhaled deeply. Last night's vows felt real but fragile. Today's lighting, cameras, and questions would test their authenticity. She turned to Sebastian, who offered a steadying nod. They linked hands and stepped out together. The magazine crew greeted them in the foyer, a stylist with a GAI garment rack, a photographer with a tripod and reflectors, a videographer with a gimbal. Polished yet warm, they ushered the family through a brief wardrobe check. "Perfect," the photographer said, eyes lighting up. "Let's start outside, Rose Garden first. Then we'll do the patio with the children, and finally the office suite for the professional shots." Evelyn led the way, her coat trailing behind her like an exclamation mark of confidence. The children raced ahead, squealing as they chased butterflies among the rose bushes. Sebastian followed, camera crew in tow, and every time one of the triplets turned and grinned at him, his heart swelled. He held Ava close while Luke and Leo plaited dandelion chains around his finger, his children's hands crafting symbols of innocence and belonging. The photographer called out, "Now look at each other. Tell me the joke you shared last night. Perfect." The shutter clicked, capturing the candid joy that no staged ceremony could produce. Next, they moved to the marble terrace overlooking the estate's reflecting pool. Evelyn and Sebastian stood side by side on a mosaic bench, children perched on their laps. A soft breeze lifted her hair, and he brushed it back. The videographer caught the movement in slow motion, the lens capturing every golden hair strand and gentle laugh line. "Hold that," the director intoned. "Magic." Finally, they headed indoors for the professional suit and dress shots in Sebastian's home office. Leather-bound ledgers lined shelves, and a broad mahogany desk commanded the room. Here, the children each stood on small risers behind their parents, resplendent in crisp attire. The photographer directed Sebastian to rest his hand on the twins' shoulders, and Ava nestled between Evelyn's arm and side. "Ideal family portrait," the photographer remarked. "This will make a statement." After the shoot, the crew packed up. Cameras stowed, last flourishes of reflection boards folded away. They thanked the family and promised a first draft within a week. As the door closed behind them, Evelyn exhaled, equal parts relief and excitement. "That went well," she said, turning to Sebastian. He smiled and ruffled Luke's hair. "They'll see the truth," he replied. "Not the gossip mills version, but us." She nodded, gratitude shining in her eyes. "We're telling our story on our terms now." He drew her close and kissed her temple. "We are." Downstairs, Marcus awaited in the library, briefcase in hand. He opened it to reveal the neatly organized folder of medical records and legal documents he'd assembled, DNA confirmations, trust agreements, school registrations, and directives for guardianship should anything happen to them. He slid the folder across the coffee table. "These are for you and Evelyn," he said. "Keep them locked away. Share them only when absolutely necessary. They ensure our children's future is beyond reproach." Sebastian closed the folder with a firm nod. "Thank you, Marcus, for everything." Marcus waved him off modestly. "Just doing my part," he said. "Remember, your greatest armor is transparency. Use these only as a last resort. Your daily truth and actions keep lies at bay." As the sun climbed higher, Sebastian and Evelyn watched their children playing on the terrace lawn, with Mrs. Blackwood supervising from a wicker chair, knowing this morning's glow would soon give way to afternoon's challenges. Invitations to charity galas, board meetings for Montgomery Deluxe, press inquiries about their remarriage, and perhaps even a hounding from Cassandra's media allies. But seated there, hand in hand, with the proof of their children's love cradled in their arms, they felt ready for whatever storms might come. The doorbell chimed at 2:00, echoing through the marble foyer. Sebastian and Evelyn exchanged wary glances. Unexpected visitors were rare these days and rarely welcomed without notice. Evelyn smoothed her blazer as Sebastian stepped forward. He opened the door to reveal two sharply dressed journalists from Lux Society Weekly, holdalls slung over shoulders, press passes glinting. "Mr. Blackwood, Mrs. Montclair," the senior correspondent began, voice cultured but urgent. "We apologize for the abrupt visit, but our deadline is tight. We have follow-up questions on last night's ceremony and the twins' paternity confirmation. May we come in?" Evelyn nodded and ushered them into the sitting room, sunlight filtering through stained glass sidelights. Sebastian closed the door behind them, giving the press a private moment. He gestured to a pair of armchairs. "Please, sit," he said, voice measured. "We'll make time, but we ask for discretion. Our children's privacy is at stake." The reporter's pen hovered over a notepad. "Understood, sir. First, congratulations on the reunion. It made headlines worldwide. Our readers are curious. How did you find the strength to welcome Ms. Montclair back?" Sebastian glanced at Evelyn, who met his eye and nodded. He turned back to the reporters. "We both made mistakes, on different sides of the rift, but our children deserved a whole family. Love for them overtook pride and resentment. That's where we found our strength." The younger journalist, camera bag at her feet, chimed in. "The Rolls-Royce arrival and the DNA reveal were undeniably dramatic. Were those planned as part of your strategy to reclaim public opinion?" Evelyn leaned forward, choosing her words. "We planned nothing beyond honesty. The phantom behind me and the documents the press saw came from our private archives, not PR strategists. The public spectacle was never the goal. Our children's well-being was." The reporters scribbled furiously. Sebastian added, "If anyone crafted a narrative, it was my ex-wife. The truth just followed her home." A flicker of humor passed between them. The senior reporter smiled, eyes bright with a scoop. "Thank you for your candor. One last question. What lies ahead for Blackwood Holdings and Montgomery Deluxe as you navigate this personal chapter?" Evelyn exchanged a look with Sebastian. "Collaboration," she said at once. "My team and I have proposed a joint community housing project with Blackwood Developments. Sustainable, inclusive, and built for families like ours. It's how we turn personal history into public good." The reporters nodded, gathering their bags. "That's exactly what our audience wants to hear," the senior reporter said, rising. "Thank you for your time." As they departed, Sebastian closed the door gently and exhaled. Evelyn crossed the room and rested her head against his chest. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "That went well." He wrapped his arm around her. "We needed to own our story," he said. "No more letting rumors win." But the quiet moment shattered moments later when Sebastian's phone buzzed. An unknown number, no caller ID. He answered before Evelyn could stop him. "Hello?" A silky female voice purred. "Did you enjoy that interview, Sebastian? Your answers were so polished." The voice paused, almost amused. "Be careful. You never know when someone will decide you're not in control of your narrative." Then the line went dead. Sebastian frowned. Evelyn lifted her head and met his gaze, concern flickering in her eyes. "Was that?" He set the phone on the console. "Cassandra," he said, voice low. "She must have lined up a call center to intercept my number." A stunned silence followed. Evelyn's hand tightened on his. "What does she want?" He shook his head. "To remind me who she is. To hint she's not done. She'll try something else." Evelyn stood and took his face in her hands. "Then we'll be ready," she said firmly. "Together." True to her word, Cassandra struck within the hour. Headlines flashed across Sebastian's tablet. Ex-bride's whistleblower. Did the DNA test leak? Secret agreements between Montclair and Blackwood? Gossip blogs buzzed with speculation. Is that the holdout relatives were scheming to undermine the children's legitimacy? Photos surfaced, grainy surveillance shots of Evelyn's penthouse building late at night. Sebastian closed the tablet with a snap. Evelyn set her coffee mug down. "They're dredging everything," she said. "They'll spill speculation quicker than facts." He stood and crossed to the library, pulling the portfolio of sealed documents from the shelf. "We have the real proofs," he said, holding it out to her. "Medical records, contracts, trust deeds, all authenticated. Evelyn took the leather folder and flipped it open. "We need a plan," she said. "If they leak, it will be chaos." Sebastian nodded. "We call in every favor. Our legal team, Marcus's influence at the hospital archives, Mr. Alcott's media connections. We'll shut down any falsified stories before they spread." Evelyn closed the folder and met his determined eyes. "And we continue living our truth. Every public appearance, every family moment. They'll see us as we are. No leak can drown out that." He took her hand and guided her back to the sitting room. "Then let's begin," he said. "We'll start by releasing an official statement, fully transparent, signed by us both, linking to our documents." She nodded, courage kindling. "And I'll speak at the CEO forum tonight, address the community directly about our collaboration and our values." Sebastian cupped her cheek. "I'll be there," he promised. "And afterward, I'm taking you and the children away from Manhattan for a weekend retreat at the lake house. We'll regroup, refocus, and remind ourselves why we fight." Outside, a summer storm brewed on the horizon. Rain spattered against the tall windows, scattering reflections of polished wood and leather-bound books. The storm felt symbolic, an upheaval summoned by past ghosts to test the newfound bonds of this family. That evening, the gala hall brimmed with New York's most influential figures. Evelyn took the stage under glittering chandeliers, delivering a keynote on sustainable housing and social responsibility. As she spoke, Sebastian watched from the wings, 3 children's faces beaming back at him from rows of seated relatives. He saw respect in the audience's eyes, nods of approval, and the confidence that had once faltered in his heart now burned steady. After her speech, journalists approached again, not for gossip but for insights on the joint project. Cassandra's whispers had vanished in the wake of Evelyn's authenticity. That night, as they left the venue, Sebastian slipped an arm around Evelyn and whispered, "Well done." She smiled warmly. "We did well," she corrected him. He looked ahead and saw Luke's yawn, Ava rubbing her eyes, Leo leaning on Cassandra's empty seat in the back. He realized that whatever storms Cassandra unleashed, the Blackwood Montclair family resilience would endure. When they returned home under umbrella canopies, rain fell in soft drums on the driveway. The Rolls-Royce Phantom waited, doors open as if bowing. One by one, they climbed in, children wrapped in blankets, Evelyn against Sebastian's side, and as the Phantom pulled away into the night, the storm masked its departure. Inside the car's warm leather embrace, Sebastian reached for Evelyn's hand. She squeezed it and whispered, "We'll weather anything." He nodded, staring out at the wet road and the lanterns fading behind them. He knew Cassandra's next move was only a matter of time, but as the car glided into the darkness, he felt secure, not in wealth or status, but in the family he had finally claimed. The car's headlights carved a silver path through winding roads flanked by dense pines as the Blackwood Montclair family approached the lake house. Rainfall earlier had settled into a hush, leaving air thick with the scent of wet cedar and moss. At the glass and stone facade, lanterns glowed like watchful eyes guarding the retreat. Sebastian and Evelyn stepped onto the flagstone, a Porsche, children trailing hand in hand, their laughter soft in the evening calm. A warm, lantern-lit glow spilled from tall windows, carrying an invitation to rest, reflect, and regroup. Inside, the great room's roaring fireplace banished the damp chill. Logs crackled under iron andirons as amber light danced on rough-hewn beams overhead. Plush sofas and oversized pillows formed an embracing circle around a low oak coffee table. A vintage phonograph in the corner stood silent, awaiting Celine's next choice of jazz or folk classics. Evelyn shed her wet coat, revealing a well-worn sweater she'd packed for this escape. Sebastian hung his blazer and tucked a strand of rain-dark hair behind his ear. Ava, still clutching Sebastian's finger, marveled at a row of family photographs on a mantel. Generations of Blackwoods and Montclairs, solemn faces looking out from gilded frames. "Is that great-grandpa?" she asked. Sebastian nodded. "He built this house with his own hands." Luke and Leo rushed upstairs to claim their rooms, twin beds already prepared with cozy quilts. Their footsteps faded as Evelyn and Sebastian crossed to the fireplace. He stood behind her and wrapped an arm around her waist. "Home," he whispered. She leaned back into his embrace. Here, we remember who we are without public eyes on every move. Dinner was a communal affair. A hearty stew simmered in an iron pot, artisanal bread still warm from the oven, and local cider sweetened with honey from the neighbors' bees. Mrs. Blackwood, serving bowls with a gentle hand, offered a prayer of gratitude for family and safety. "To nights when no one watches but the trees," she said. Glasses clinked, and the sound carried above the crackling hearth. Ava ate slowly, savoring each bite. Luke and Leo argued over which marshmallow was fluffiest for roasting later. Laughter and the scent of rosemary mingled, weaving a new memory into the old house's history. After dinner, they gathered in the library for a board game marathon. A century-old chessboard offered strategic battles between Sebastian and Mrs. Blackwood while the children wrestled over checkers. Evelyn sat with Mrs. Hope, poring over architectural sketches for the joint housing project. Marcus and Mr. Alcott joined the circle, their presence a quiet reassurance that support extended beyond blood. Every roll of dice and rattle of pieces felt like a stitch in the tapestry of trust they were weaving. When the games ended, the group migrated outside to a fire pit on the lawn. Logs crackled under an iron grate as friends and family arranged chairs and logs around the glowing embers. A stack of firewood lay nearby, and Marcus took up the bellows to stoke the flames. Ava insisted on marshmallow duty, and Luke and Leo retrieved sticks for roasting. Flames danced on their wide-eyed faces as they toasted small spheres of sugar and chocolate. They giggled at the sugary drips down their chins. Evelyn brought out a thermos of cocoa topped with whipped cream, sharing cups with everyone. As the embers died to red coals, conversation turned softer. Mrs. Hope recounted childhood summers spent at the lake, fishing with her father, picnics on mossy rocks, night skies ablaze with constellations. Marcus joined in with memories of building tree forts and reading poetry beneath the pines. Each anecdote drew the children closer to their roots, binding past and present in a living continuum. In a quieter moment, Sebastian and Evelyn wandered down to the water's edge where mist hovered above a mirror-still surface. The moon, veiled by drifting clouds, cast muted reflections on the ripples. Sebastian picked up a smooth stone and skimmed it across the lake. It plashed 3 times. "You used to compete with me on stone skipping," he said softly. Evelyn smiled, stepping closer. "I won every time." He turned her gently toward him. "And I've never beaten you in anything more important than that." She laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. They stood in silence, listening to frogs calling in the reeds and the distant croak of night birds. He slipped an arm around her shoulders. "When we return to the city, the storms will rage again. Cassandra's schemes, the press, board meetings, but here we're invincible." She pressed her cheek to his chest. "We are," she agreed, "as long as we remember nights like this." Back in the great room, the phonograph played a soft jazz standard. The children drifted in, brushing crumbs from their pajamas. Owl-shaped nightlights glowed on bespectacled shelves. Luke and Leo nestled beside Marcus on a velvet settee, while Ava climbed into Mrs. Blackwood's lap. Sebastian poured brandy for the adults and passed around herbal tea for the many who preferred calm endings. Each sip warmed them from within as they exchanged reflections on the day's peace. Evelyn caught Sebastian's gaze across the room and raised her cup in a silent toast. He mirrored her gesture. "To us," he mouthed. "To now," she replied. When the hour grew late, everyone dispersed to their rooms. Hallway lanterns flickered like faithful sentinels. Mrs. Blackwood tucked Ava into a canopy bed decorated with embroidered flowers. Luke and Leo fell asleep instantly, heads touching in twin harmony. Marcus and Mr. Alcott occupied the guest wing, their lights still on as they whispered plans for further legal protections. In the master suite, Sebastian and Evelyn locked the door behind them. She turned on a dim bedside lamp and sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing the duvet. He joined her, pulling her into his lap. "I'm grateful for every one of these moments," she said. "They're the proof we're building something real." He cradled her face. "I promise you, nothing will break us again." She closed her eyes against his chest, breathing in the scent of cedarwood and lavender. They drifted off under a quilt of shared trust, exhaustion and contentment mingling in dreams. Outside, pines whispered secrets in the night wind, and the lake held the reflections of St. Pass. At dawn, they would emerge renewed, ready to face the world beyond the lake house. But for now, they slept as a family united, children dreaming of new adventures, grandparents resting in quiet joy, friends at peace in the shelter of chosen bonds. And Sebastian finally understood that home wasn't a place on a map. It was the space they created together, sheltered from storms both natural and manufactured. The morning sun filtered through mist that hovered over the lake as Sebastian stepped onto the porch with a steaming mug in hand. Evelyn joined him, wrapped in a knitted shawl, her gaze tracing the water where dawn stole across glassy ripples. Behind them, the children slept on, cocooned in quilts, and the estate's servants moved quietly, preparing a simple brunch of fresh fruit, yogurt, and honeyed granola. Outside, petals from wildflowers dotted the stone path, a reminder that life continued to bloom beyond any one family's struggle. Sebastian inhaled the crisp air. "Tomorrow we face Manhattan again," he murmured, voice taut with resolve. Evelyn leaned her head on his shoulder. "Together," she answered, her hand finding his. "No leaks, no whispers, just our truth." He nodded, feeling the weight of every promise he had made anchor itself in this tranquil moment. They joined Mrs. Blackwood for brunch in the sunny conservatory, where ferns arched above wicker chairs and a porcelain teapot steamed on an intricately carved table. Marcus arrived with fresh croissants, and Mr. Alcott carried a basket of berries he'd picked at dawn. Conversation flowed easily. Talk of budgets for the housing project, plans for a summer retreat, and even a bit of laughter over Leo's attempt to teach grandmother chess last night. The gentle clatter of china and soft murmur of voices created a protective cocoon around them. As plates emptied, Sebastian's phone buzzed with an incoming video. Call from the Blackwood Holdings board. He excused himself, stepping into the hallway. On screen, the stern faces of board members awaited him, expressions wavering between concern and curiosity. He took a breath. "Good morning," he said, voice firm. "I'm here to affirm that family matters will remain separate from business, and that our planned joint development proceeds without delay." A director with silver hair asked, "Sir, given the recent publicity, will your personal life affect the timing of our capital infusion?" Sebastian steadied his tone. "I assure you, our company finances are sound. The press frenzy has only underscored our commitment to transparency and community engagement. The joint project will break ground as scheduled, and I'll personally oversee town hall forums to ensure public confidence." There was a pause, then nods of assent. The board meeting closed with unanimous support, and Sebastian ended the call with relief washing through him. Stepping back into the conservatory, he met Evelyn's curious gaze. "All set," he reported. "We're still on track." She smiled, pride brightening her face. "That's our promise in action." Their return to Manhattan the next day brimmed with contrasts, the hush of the lake replaced by city clamor, the gentle lapping of water by the thunder of taxi horns. The family entered the Blackwood Holdings headquarters through a side entrance, escorted by security who scanned press passes and whispered about yesterday's keynote and today's board vote. Inside the gleaming lobby of white marble and steel, a bank of monitors streamed channels replaying snippets of Duchess magazine's exclusive coverage. Headlines proclaimed "Family restored, fortune secured." Sebastian exhaled and led them toward the private elevator. On the 15th floor, he unlocked the door to his office suite, the same space where months ago he'd met with Cassandra in hushed corridors. Now, the walls held new photographs, the wedding reborn, the lake house at dawn, the triplets mid-laughter. Evelyn cut the ribbon on a framed portrait of their fire. Amy and Ava pressed her tiny hand against the glass, while Luke and Leo argued which pose made them look most heroic. Marcus and Mr. Alcott stood at the windows, nodding approvingly, and Mrs. Blackwood cooed over the children's excitement. Sebastian closed the door, finally turning to Evelyn. "This is our domain now," he said. "Every memory here belongs to us." She placed a hand on his arm. "And every visitor will feel that ownership." He straightened his tie, confidence settling in his shoulders. "Let's show them how it's done." He greeted arriving colleagues with firm handshakes, introducing them to the children. Reports awaited on his desk, quarterly earnings, project proposals, and a leaking rumor from a rival firm claiming insider knowledge of personal agreements. He set that aside. "We'll address facts, not whispers," he told Evelyn as she reviewed blueprints for the community center. "I'll handle the press conference this afternoon," she said. "You lead the development strategy session." At 2 o'clock, the conference room brimmed with journalists, analysts, and civic leaders. Evelyn stood at the podium under a banner reading Blackwood Montclair Community Initiative. She spoke with measured warmth, announcing scholarships for children in the development, green roof standards, and a mentorship program pairing families with local artisans. Each pledge earned applause, and the triplets, dressed in coordinated vests, stood beside her like pint-sized ambassadors. Cameras clicked, capturing moments of authenticity no scandal could uncurl. Meanwhile, Sebastian faced his executive team in the adjacent war room. He outlined timelines, funding allocations, and marketing strategies. His voice exuded clarity, and when concerns arose about delays from earlier PR storms, he countered with data. No cost overruns, community interest surging, waiting lists for affords, able units doubling. He concluded by announcing a surprise, a naming rights agreement for the project's central plaza in honor of the Blackwood and Montclair families, a symbol of unity forged through adversity. The room erupted in congratulatory applause. After both events, the couple reunited in the lobby. Evelyn's phone pinged with congratulatory messages. Sebastian's inbox overflowed with investor commitments. They shared a triumphant smile. He summoned the children, lifted Ava into his arms, and guided Luke and Leo to march with him toward the exit. The press hounded them briefly, flashes firing, but as they passed into a private sedan, the world melted away. On the drive back to their Manhattan residence, the children dozed against their parents' sides. Evelyn closed her eyes, leaning her head on Sebastian's shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. He kissed her hair. "We did." At home, as the sedan pulled up beneath a wrought-iron canopy, Cassandra's silhouette flickered on a townhouse window across the street. Her figure was framed by candlelight. The same scene that once haunted him now met his gaze as a silent dare. But he entered the house holding Evelyn's hand, its door closing softly behind them, shutting out her shadow. Inside, the foyer's mosaic floor reflected chandelier light as they crossed to the living room, where framed headlines and letters of support from residents lined the walls. Ava's dollhouse stood in the corner, and the twins' art projects adorned the mantel. Marcus and Mr. Alcott waited with tea trays, ready to toast the day's success. "To progress," Marcus said, raising his glass, "and to the family who made it happen." They drank, laughter bubbling like champagne, until the children, roused by the clinking of glasses, joined them with mugs of hot chocolate. Bashful but beaming, they toasted in unison, "To family!" Each sip brought giggles, and soon all were exchanging stories of splashes at the lake, impromptu boardroom diplomacy, and the fun of being photographed. Later, as night settled over the city skyline, Evelyn and Sebastian found a quiet moment on the balcony. Below, street lamps cast long reflections on wet pavement, traffic humming in distant rhythms. He wrapped an arm around her waist and whispered, "Every day is our choice, ours to live, to love, to defend." She leaned into him, eyes bright in the glow of city lights. "And we choose us," she affirmed. Inside the study, a final envelope awaited on Sebastian's desk. He picked it up. No return address, just elegant script on ivory paper. He tore it open to reveal an invitation, a gala hosted by Cassandra Montclair Enterprises, promising a grand unveiling and surprising developments. He looked up at Evelyn, eyebrows raised. "She beckons us back into her game," he said. Evelyn slipped her hand into his. "Then we'll keep our promises. Live our truth. We'll attend, and we'll take this moment too. We'll show the world, again, that nothing can break our family." He folded the invitation and placed it in a drawer alongside the contracts that bound him to Evelyn and their children forever. The future would bring more storms, but for now they had weathered the fiercest gale together. And in that quiet confidence, they found the strength to face whatever came next. They stepped from the car onto Cassandra's red carpet, where press and guests assembled beneath the gala marquee reading, "Montclair Legacy Unveiling." Sebastian smiled at Evelyn and whispered, "Stay close." The triplets clung to their hands, awe bright in their eyes. Inside the grand foyer, Cassandra stood atop a sweeping staircase in emerald silk, her smile poised and cool. Sebastian recalled her glare at their ruined wedding before. Now she beckoned them forward. Evelyn lifted her chin, signaling shared confidence. Cassandra descended with graceful steps and said, "Welcome. Your presence honors me." Every syllable dripped with response. Sebastian nodded. "We came to witness your masterpiece." Cassandra gestured, and velvet curtains parted to reveal a gleaming sculptural tower of twisted glass and steel. Guests gasped, but Sebastian saw hollow beauty without heart. He stepped forward, children at his side, and placed a hand on Evelyn's back. "Remarkable," he said, his voice echoing gently. "But art without purpose is only form." The room stilled. Marcus advanced and presented Cassandra with an invitation embossed in gold. Blackwood Montclair Community Plaza Grand Launch. Whispers fluttered. Cassandra's lips parted. "This is your plan?" she faltered. Abby asked, "Mom, what is it?" Evelyn smiled and answered, "A place for people, not ego." Luke and Leo gripped Sebastian's fingers. Ava pressed a small hand to Cassandra's, offering a simple gift of acceptance. Guests pivoted toward the children, their laughter filling the space with life. In that moment, Cassandra's sculpture dimmed under the warmth of shared humanity. And on her gala stage, the real legacy of truth, service, and family shone brighter than any trophy.